From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Polk Lore. I'm your host, James Hernishin. For the second part of our series on education, let's turn to the student's point of view. I've known Myles Freeman for about a decade, since he was a student at Saluda Elementary and one of my son's friends. I'd like to be able to claim that I long ago recognized he would rise above the pack. You know, the way some teachers say they can identify right from kindergarten who will succeed and fail. But the truth is, Myles was pretty much like any other student, exceptionally good at some things like soccer, and a relatively free spirit who seemed to be able to choose friends wisely, but not obviously destined to take on the establishment. Fast forward to this past February, to the monthly meeting of the Polk Schools Board of Education. Like most meetings, the open portion wrapped up with public comments. One member of the audience walked to the microphone, spent the first 45 seconds of her allotted 3 minutes saying a prayer, and then launched into this.
I come today to address some concerns that Polk County school policies have for transgenders. As a mother of two students in the public school system, I feel there's a safety concern. You're allowing genders to mix in the bathrooms and locker rooms. You have students that are non-transgenders who are uncomfortable. You have dangerous situations that could happen. If you look at Loudoun County, Virginia, a non-conforming gender male in a skirt walked into a bathroom and violently raped a 15-year-old little girl. Now, am I saying that the transgenders at Polk County would do that? No. I know one of them people, and I'm not specifically going to say that person, but I don't feel that that's what the case is here. But I feel like we're opening the doors for pedophiles to have more access to our children. And that's where we have to protect them. When those children that are not transgenders voice their concerns that they're uncomfortable, that's when we need to look at the policies again. The Lord made a biological male and a biological female. You will always be a male if you were born a male, and you will always be a female if you were born a female. If you try to change that, you are saying that the Lord was wrong, that he made a mistake. And our God is perfect. He does not make mistakes. I just ask that you review the policies, that you look at the safety of the children, not just the transgenders, that you take into considerations the parents that weren't told about it, and we should have known from the get-go that you were allowing this in our school systems. Thank you.
Myles, along with a half dozen friends and allies, was in the high school auditorium that evening because he'd heard that kind of thing before and he knew he was going to hear it again. It was personal for Myles because until recently he was known by his birth name, Maya, and over the past few years he's been one of a small group of Polk High students who are making the transition from one gender to another, not because it's trendy, but because of who they really are. A few minutes later, Myles walked to the microphone to give a rebuttal. Even though I hadn't yet begun to work on this podcast, I knew right then that I wanted Myles to be a guest, if for no other reason than any 14-year-old who's brave enough to stand up to the bullying parents at a school board meeting deserves more than 3 minutes to be heard. We talked a few weeks ago in Saluda. Myles Freeman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I'm so glad you can make it. You've just come from a track meet, track practice?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Does that take up a lot of your time?
Yeah, every day after school is practice, and then meets are, sometimes we have 2 a week, 1 a week usually. So, yeah.
And you still do soccer?
No, our season's off for about a year because of high school. So, no, not at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know you used to be all about soccer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my big thing for a while, but now it's kind of track, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now, of course, you've gotten a little bit of a profile for being someone who's an outspoken defender of you and your fellow trans people, right? And we just listened to a kind of interesting statement from a parent in a couple months ago at the school board. What prompted you to take a leading role in speaking up for yourself?
To be honest, I think the biggest part was not so much for myself. I wanted to defend my fellow trans friends, peers, people that I know. My closest friend, one of my closest friends, was directly impacted by everything that this person was doing, the speaker at the meeting. And mainly I did it for him. He was the driving force of me speaking out and defending our rights, I feel. Another big part would be educating the masses there at that meeting. I know that a lot of people, probably about like half of them, were definitely not for defending trans people. They were on the opposing side, or I guess oppressing. And I know that many of them have never actually sat down and like talked with a trans person, or actually probably not even researched half the stuff that actually happens in someone's transition. So I thought that would be my opportunity to give trans people a voice and give Polk County some representation, because I've never seen any in Polk County or surrounding.
Well, I think it's an issue that probably a lot of people want to skirt around, right? I mean, when you came to that school board meeting and you had to sit through that little lecture from a woman who I think is a little bit confused about some things. For instance, she references a Loudoun, Virginia issue. That issue did not involve a non-conforming boy, that they were actually boyfriend, girlfriend, and they were just, it was from a lot different from what she's trying to say and using as an example of what bad stuff can happen. So what was it like sitting there listening to that?
Enraging, most definitely. I mean, it was very hard to sit down and not say anything, of course, but I had to keep it civil, and really it helped me gain confidence to go up and speak after her. I'm kind of glad that she set the tone so I could go up there and speak my mind and speak my part. So she's kind of helpful, but yeah, it was definitely hard to listen to.
But you weren't alone there.
No, not at all.
And this is what really impressed me, is you had a small posse of allies, right? And Molly Turman, is that her name?
Yeah.
She gave a really strong explanation of why you and other trans kids need a little bit of respect and support. So how strong is that support network in Polk High?
It honestly depends on where you go. If you find the right people, I know a lot of teachers ever since that meeting have shown their support and have gone out of their way to say, if you ever need to talk or if you never need anything, I'm an ally. And that's greatly appreciated. I think that's awesome. Polk has opened up many counseling resources now for queer youth, especially not just queer youth, but everyone. And I think that's very helpful. For me personally, I know trans people at school. Tight-knit group of friends have been like my number one support through this. So I think if you don't pay attention to some of the negativity, I think there is definitely some, but they are the loudest speakers in Polk. They have the loudest voices. I think if you pay attention to the minority of hate, people do show their true colors in a very good light. So I think it's okay if you know where to look.
Well, this is the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, that there's not a huge number of trans people in the general population, right? It's like low single digit. It's not like the world's going to get taken over by trans people.
Exactly.
And yet, I don't know, it almost seems like this is the latest thing to get upset about, right? And trying to look at it from the other point of view, though, simply that people are struggling to get used to changes in society. I mean, people have just gotten used to gay people being treated with respect and being part of our culture and being on television and movies, and not as a token gay person, but just they happen to be gay. So people have just gotten used to that. And now we throw trans at them too, right? So can you see why people are struggling to sort of come to grips with this? I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm trying to get inside their head. It's not that they are driven by hatred or disgust. It's like they don't like change. Yeah. Right? You represent change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and a lot of people have said this, people fear what they don't understand. And I think because it's so foreign to them, the idea of someone not feeling as how they were born, how their gender at birth. So I think the fact that they don't understand it, even if, I mean, sometimes maybe they don't even try to come across as hateful, but the things that they say are so bigoted and so just set in, I don't even know how to phrase this. Their ideas are set so far back. They don't want to change. And I feel like they're so comfortable in how they live. They don't see the need. And yeah, they're just afraid of change, I feel like.
Well, we're in a rural part of the
Yeah.
state. I mean, this is not Manhattan, right? We're never going to elect an AOC. So how fast can we expect people to sort of come to grips with the new reality?
I honestly think it depends on how hard it's pushed. Ever since the board meeting happened and since this debate started rising, I've seen a lot of people become more moderate. I feel like they're kind of set in the middle instead of right on the side of, this can't happen. Trans people shouldn't exist. This isn't right. They've become more like set in, I don't really care, as long as they don't force it on me, which I would rather have than outwardly saying, like, this isn't correct and I disagree fully. And so I feel like the more that it's pushed and the more that it's brought into light, the more that people see that, we're humans too and we just want to live normally just as everyone else. I think people will start to change their mind.
Now, there's a difference between the way an idea spreads through a local community like Polk County and the way in which ideas are propagated through the national media, right? Now, if you were to spend all of your time watching the national news, you'd hear things like in Idaho or Texas where they're trying to say that parents who support their trans kids are engaging in some sort of child abuse. Or in Florida, they're talking about you can't say gay in the classroom. Mm-hmm. It's easy to understand how that would motivate people to get really upset and worried about things. But I want to understand how the community in Polk County is dealing with this. I mean, do you sense that when people locally are forced to engage with you or have to deal with real human beings and not just news headlines, that there's more progress can be made?
Yeah, I think so. Totally. It really helps to actually, I feel like the biggest part is meeting people and talking to them and sit down and actually see the face that they hate. I think that was a big thing. That was also a big drive for my speech at the board meeting, was that I'm giving a face to this hate. And I think it definitely silenced some people.
Do you think that, for the lack of a better word, the opposition was expecting to hear from you and Molly?
No, I feel like they felt that we would be too scared to speak. I like disproving them.
Well, I think you probably accomplished something to that end.
I would hope so. Yeah, I would like to think so.
I mean, was there any changes noticeable in school after that?
I haven't heard anything regarding me and my trans peers since the meeting. I've heard that the administration only got one complaint from, like, I don't even know how many people were there, but one person complained. And I thought that was pretty awesome. Like, wasn't expecting that.
Okay, but you're painting a relatively positive picture of your place in the the high school ecosystem, in sense that most kids seem to be relatively either I don't care, it's not my business, or supportive. But at the board meeting, you and Molly both talked about a lot of negative stuff coming down. I don't want to get too personal, but how often do you run into something that reminds you that there are still a lot of resistance to accepting you for who you are?
Oh, every day. Every day. Yeah. I can hear conversations around me, like, complaining about all these new genders are rising. Like, oh my gosh, they're trying to make up all these things. People still haven't made it past gay people yet at school. And, like, every day I can hear people just complaining and bashing queer people for no reason. They just, yeah, that's really.
Well, have you just developed a thick skin?
Yeah, I kind of learned to not let that get past me, because I know that their ignorance, they're just not educated. And I would love to be able to sit down and talk with every one of these people and show them, like, hey, it's okay. Like, you don't need to really worry about it. There's nothing to worry about. But yeah, it took a while. Like, I've been part of this community since 4th or 5th grade. And it definitely, I wouldn't have felt the same about this probably 3 years ago, but after some time to develop a thick skin, yeah.
So is it just kind of disappointing to hear that you have to go to school every day knowing that, okay, someone's going to give me grief, right? I mean, there have always been outcasts. There's nerds or geeks or people who just don't look normal or they have problems with their weight. So it's not like you're the first person to have to deal with being ostracized, right? But do you see a trajectory towards it getting better?
Yeah, I do. I honestly think that if we take more action and if we have more representation and if we could get things done in our little town, then I feel like it would be an eye-opener for a lot of people.
What are the obstacles, or who are the obstacles? Is it the parents? Is it the school system, or is it the school population, the student population?
I think it's all the above. I think that all of those combined kind of makes a pretty big wall to climb over. I think the main driving force is all the adults around us, specifically like the parents, I guess would probably, they're the ones that are teaching their kids this. And like in most cases, the kids are better than the parents, even if they are somewhat bigoted in their opinions. It's much better than what their parents think.
In the same way that young people kind of drove the acceptance of gay lifestyles.
Yeah.
Right? And okay. Who should be sort of getting off the fence and being more proactive? I mean, I don't hear much from our political representatives, either, the county level or the towns, certainly not from our congressman, right? Is there an opportunity to maybe ask county commissioners or someone to at least say something?
If I could find an opportunity, I would most definitely love to take it, because I feel like a lot of people in our community turn to those people for like words of, I want to say guidance, and I feel like if we had some representation from people like our Congress and like stuff like that, our administrators, everything, I think it would open an eye for a lot of people here.
Well, we might have to wait a while.
Yeah, it might take a while, but yeah.
You're 15, and I think you just turned 15?
Yeah, in February.
Well, congratulations. Making it that far.
Yeah.
So another 3-4 years, and you're going to probably go off to school somewhere. It's too soon to ask you where you're thinking of going, but does your experience as a young trans man in Polk County affect how you might think about where you want to go?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I would love to go to a place that's definitely more accepting, like anywhere, like even Asheville, somewhere surrounding any place. I feel like outside of Polk and Hendersonville and stuff is pretty accepting. I would, love to go to a probably city like that. That's the only places that I've been that I've seen a lot of people like me, and I've seen a lot of like representation there. So probably somewhere like that.
Right. I mean, we don't expect young people to stick around Polk County or Henderson County immediately.
Yeah.
But I think parents always think, well, maybe you want to come home someday. And I'm thinking maybe in 10 or 20 years, things might be a little different. You might be a little less hostile around here.
Yeah, I would hope so. That's what part of me is kind of like, I would love to leave Polk to get to a more open place, but I feel like I would also love to be the driving force of change here and try and help things move forward.
Well, that's why you're on the podcast.
So. Yeah.
Okay. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, it really to make you more than just an activist for one issue, is you're a percussionist, you're an athlete. How would you like to be perceived by people that you meet, rather than saying, oh, you're the trans kid? How would you like to be defined?
Honestly, I think there's a lot more things that people see than that trans kid. I have like half red hair. I wear crazy shirts every day. Like, I feel like there's a lot more that people do perceive me as. I like being known as like the weird kid. That's kind of like the title that I've taken in high school, and being that kind of, I love diving into arts and like music, painting. I like being well-rounded in athletics along with like academics. So I think I don't know if I could really label one thing, but I feel like being known as just an overall, just like Myles. It's just Myles. And I think that's kind of what I want to get across. I am a lot. That's my main point, is that I'm a lot more than the label trans. And sometimes I'm really adamant, or I don't want to tell people, because all they're going to see me is just like, they're just going to see that trans kid. So, yeah.
What about your thoughts on Polk High School? Outside of the challenge of being accepted for who you are, which everyone has to face. Mm-hmm. One of the things these first few episodes of this podcast is trying to do is evaluate our school system, because it is something that I think most people take pride in. Mm-hmm. Right? Polk High and Polk schools are generally rated as among the best in the state. And some people keep saying they're number 2. I think we're probably a little bit lower than that most of the time. But how would you rate it? Like, do you think it warrants a lot of pride?
I think, yeah, everyone in that school is very prideful of the school that they go to and attend. I personally, I think it is a pretty good school. It's really small, which kind of doesn't help a lot of things. There's probably a lot more that we could do if we had like the funding, if we had the staff. But I think for what we have right now, Polk is a pretty good school. I think it's a good school system. It's okay.
Well, I think that most people like to believe that they've got one of the better school systems in North Carolina, and that's always going to cloud their judgment, because you want to be proud of your local school, right? Mm-hmm. But the first episode of this podcast, I talked to Miss Reinhardt. Did you ever have her?
I went to a camp with her once.
Yeah. And she told me that people should stop criticizing a lot of the things that is going on in the last 6-7 months. During COVID, we've had so much grief, headed at the school board and the schools in general. But she said, look, the schools are pretty darn good, and we should feel lucky. Mm-hmm. And the one question I want to get is, why do you think that is? Is it because of the quality of the teachers? Is it just the nature of the community as a whole?
I think, looking past how divided we could get, I think everyone in some sense is like unified somewhat. Especially with my mom being a teacher, I know how hard the staff works, and I know that they do try their hardest at what they do. At least from what I've heard and seen. I think that we do have a I think there's positives and negatives to having a small community. And with Polk being a pretty small one, I think that we, in a sense, do have kind of, I would say, mutual aid for each other. I feel like a lot of people are there for one another, looking past our differences. For the most part, people in Polk do still care about each other.
And so you're looking forward to the next 3 years? The last 3 years?
Yeah, it's high school, so like how good could it get? It's okay. But yeah.
All right, well, that's a good ending point. Just one other question. Mm-hmm. I kind of like to get my guests to give a sense of what they would like others to be consuming in forms of media, music, art. So have you got any suggestions musically, maybe?
Musically?
Yeah.
Oh, man. For me, I think, I don't know if I can name anyone in particular, but I feel like a great place to start would be your local music. That's like my big thing. I love the local music around here. Anywhere in like Western North Carolina, I think it ranges from like everything, every genre. And I think that would be like a great place to start if you really want to get out there in your local, like I would say, scene and stuff. I would start locally.
All right, great. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Of course, yeah. Thank you.
maybe we'll do this again sometime after, we've had a chance to see how things evolve.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this week's episode. We've finished this 3-part series on education next time with a talk with the superintendent of Polk schools. In the meantime, you can contact me at jamesH@polklore.com with your feedback and guest suggestions for future shows. Thanks for listening.